So let's see what happens here. Well, that didn't sound very good at all. I don't know what the hell that was. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. So today we've got a tear in the project totaled Suburban. The other day the wife was driving it and the oil pressure gauge would go to 0 at idle when she'd stop at a stoplight, and it would say shut engine off immediately, and then she would give it some gas or take off or whatever and it would go back up. So probably the problem with this is going to be the O-ring on the pickup tube. So we're going to pull the pan off to get that replaced. So we've got a new oil pan gasket and a new O-ring to replace that pickup tube. So let's get this thing jacked up and see what we're all going to have to pull off to get it fixed. Alright, so you can see the oil pan pretty easily right there. It's pretty easily accessible. We will have to drop this cross member down. 2 bolts here, 2 bolts there in order to gain access to be able to lower the pan down enough, and then we'll have to also lower the front differential just to get the clearance to bring the pan down and slide it back and out. So in order to do that, 2 bolts here, 2 bolts on the back side over there, and then you got a handful of bolts holding the oil pan on. And it looks like we have a slight coolant leak somewhere up there, so I'm going to go ahead and assume it's probably coming from the heater hose lines. I have not looked into it yet, just noticed that. A little bit of a pool on the ground from sitting overnight. So it looks like the oil pan gasket was leaking just a little bit, so it'll be good to get this fixed up. So I guess it's time to get to work. Alright guys, so we're getting the cross member unbolted now and moving on to draining the oil out of this thing, and now we are lowering the front differential. Put a jack underneath it just in case so it didn't fall. Didn't really actually need to have the jack underneath there. Got the oil filter off, and now we're starting to pull some of the pan bolts out. We're going to get all the pan bolts we can easily get to, and then we're going to pull this front cover off in order to gain access to the wire loom that's up there and access those quote-unquote hidden bolts underneath the wire loom. I believe there's 4 of them there. We're going to go ahead and take the rest of the bolts out of the back of the pan. And now we're going to start working on the oil cooler lines, which are mounted on the driver's side upper half of the oil pan. Kind of a pain to get to with the drive shaft there, but we'll get those out. The pan's loose. There is a hidden bolt on the passenger side that is holding the trans lines on, as well as a wiring harness. I did have to disconnect the axle and the rack and pinion in order to get enough room to have the pan drop down. And then don't forget to disconnect the dust shields on the trans. Okay, we got the oil pan out. Hidden bolts, not really hidden, they were just covered up with grease and dirt and debris, so I didn't see them. This is for an inspection cover or flywheel cover. There's one there, and then one again over here. And in the front, there is one right there that holds the wiring harness on, so you can pop that loose. And then over here on the side, this holds the, this would be on the passenger side, this holds the tranny cooler lines and wiring harness on the side. So can't really see that one, but those need to be removed before the pan will come out. Also, these front 4 pan bolts are hidden underneath the wiring loom and harness. So underneath the car here, this is the pickup here, and we just need to undo this nut here, and can we see it up there? I think this bolt here, it's kind of hard to see. there, and then that should come, I can't see because there's a rack in the way, right there. And then that'll pull out, and we'll see what kind of shape that O-ring's in. Okay, the pickup is out. The O-ring is intact and not cracked. Feels a little hard, but it seems like it was probably doing the trick. So I don't know if that was what the actual problem was. The oil pan gasket on the block side around those two holes was definitely leaking. It was leaking across the back there too, and on the side. So could have been losing a little bit of pressure from that, I suppose. So I guess at this point I'm going to clean all this up, replace that O-ring, replace the pan gasket, and put it all back together, and we'll see what happens. If this doesn't fix it, we'll be going after the oil pump, I suppose. Ugh, that sucks, but I guess we'll find out. We'll get it put back together and see what happens. Okay, I just removed the 4 10mm bolts that were holding the baffle in to get down here into the bottom of the sump, because I want to clean this out. There's a bunch of sludge and gunk in there in the bottom of the pan, so I want to just go ahead and get all that out while we have access to it. It doesn't look like any metal or anything in it, just sludge, so we'll get it cleaned up. To get this O-ring off, I'm just going to use a little hooked pick. And just like that. Go ahead and take the new one. Roll it on. Got the oil pan all cleaned up, and got the baffle put back in. We will go clean the underside of the block and get that prepped for installing the pan. Okay, so now that we got the bottom of the block all cleaned up, the mating surface is cleaned and scraped, we're going to want to put 4 beads of RTV in each corner of the block across each one of these lines. And then again in the front, right there, to seal those corners up and keep stuff from leaking. Well, that kind of sucked. It wasn't the funnest thing to do. Hopefully it fixed the problem, because the O-ring was not that bad. Yeah, it's all back together. I'm ready to dump some oil in and see if we got any leaks. Alright, well, we have got the oil topped off, got the filter on, got everything buttoned up. I think it's time to start it and see what happens. It's been a little over an hour or so since we put the RTV in the corner, so I think that should be enough time. It's our gasket, so let's see what happens here. Well, that didn't sound very good at all. I don't know what the hell that was. Guess it's time to go figure out what that sound was. Okay, well, I have no idea what the hell that sound was. I started it 3 more times and still made that sound. It had oil pressure, so I wasn't terribly worried that we screwed anything up. Kind of sounded like the starter was hanging up a little bit. And the only thing that I could think of would be the that plastic dust shield. Kind of went in difficult, like it wasn't quite lining up right on the passenger side, right around the starter. So I went underneath there and smacked that and kind of pushed it back into place. So I think that might have been, I don't know if that was messing with the starter or what, but it does not make that noise now. So everything runs good. It's got good oil pressure so far. Hopefully this fixes the problem. It's always kind of gut-wrenching when you start the car after a project like that, and then you hear a scary noise or a bad noise and you just wonder what the hell is wrong. What did I do wrong? But I don't know what the hell that was. I'm gonna assume it had something to do with the starter was not disengaging all the way. So it's working now. That's all I care about. So I'm gonna get it down on the ground and go take it for a little bit of a test drive, get it up to operating temperature. It's about 45 psi right now of oil pressure, and see if we get any leaks. So far it's dry. No leaks under there, so that's good. And the coolant leak that we saw earlier is definitely coming from one of the heater hoses. While I was looking at the starter, it's coming from this one here. I saw it drip right at the bottom side of that hose. So that fitting is going to need to be replaced. Unfortunately, it's I guess that's what happens when you have a 200,000 mile car. Everything starts wearing out and breaking. But let's get it on the ground, take it for a test drive. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. Day 2 of the SOG on the Suburban. So we got it all buttoned back up last night with the pickup tube O-ring and oil pan gasket. Took it out. Everything was going good for about 30 minutes. And then it did the exact same thing. It just started fluctuating, dropping. So I don't know what the hell it is. Now it's throwing codes. PO... the hell was it? PO522 and PO521, which are all basically the circuit range for the sensor. So what that tells me is maybe possibly the sensor has failed in 7 months, which is stupid if that's the case. But what we're going to do anyway is pull the sensor out and install a mechanical gauge on this thing. So I had to order a part from Speedway. It's ready to be picked up now, so I'll probably head over there and pick it up here pretty quick, and we'll just run the gauge up and stick it on the windshield, and we'll watch it, see what it does. We'll see if it has pressure or not. So that's what we're gonna do today. Alright guys, it's been about 2 weeks since we got the Suburban up and running, and so far we've had no issues with the oil pressure. The unfortunate thing is, after we replaced the oil pump pickup tube O-ring, it still had the same erratic problem after driving for about 20 minutes. So my new attack was I was going to put a manual gauge on, so I went down to Speedway, got this adapter so that we could hook up this old school gauge, just clip it underneath the windshield wiper. And we were going to go into the sensor port that's right in the back behind the intake on the back of the motor. Well, I just replaced the sensor probably 6 to 8 months ago, so I thought there's no way in hell the sensor could have went bad. Well, it turns out the sensor had gone bad, and that's what our problem was the whole time. When I pulled it out, this part right here where you plug the wires into was full of oil. So I'm assuming what would happen is it was seeping oil through there, so after you drive for about 20 minutes or whatever, it'll get enough oil in there, it'll start kind of shorting stuff out, grounding things out, so it'd make the gauge go to 0, make it bounce back up, and then just super erratic. So that being said, that sucks, because I put a new sensor in 2 weeks ago, and it's been perfect ever since. It sucks I spent, better half of a day replacing the oil pan gasket and the pickup tube, but however, it had a slight oil pan leak, so we got that fixed, so that's good, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. Should have just went after this right away, this adapter fitting, and hooked up the manual gauge just to verify what the actual oil pressure was. So it sucks that we did all that, but always got to look at the bright side. We got a new oil pan gasket in it. So that being said, it has been colder than out here. It's -20, I think, last night, so it's too cold to try to keep heat in this garage enough to paint, so we haven't been working on Project Prelude, so we're going to roll over to a couple of little projects where we don't need as much heat in here, and yeah, just keep moving on other stuff. So that being said, it's going to be a wrap for the Suburban. If you guys have any questions about what we did or problems I ran into, leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.